Hello, how are you?
Well, good day, mate. How are you going?
Good, good. Got a passer for me?
Yep. You need a signature?
Yes.
Steve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day. See ya.
Thank you. Cheers.
Well, the extremes and the lengths somebody would go to just to continue adventure riding for as long as they can. Grab your gear, let's go. Well, I'm on my way to see a mate, Dave. Dave is also a member of the BMW Motorcycle Club here in Western Australia. Today's a little different. I'm actually on my way to convert this bike, the BMW R1200, from a 19-inch front wheel to a 21-inch. There's a few reasons for that. I'm getting older and I'm finding it more and more difficult to take the bike in places that I'd like to go to, perhaps in places it's not designed to go to, but that's a different story. So we're going to change the front wheel out to 21-inch. Why 21-inch? This bike comes standard with a 19-inch front wheel. And the reason for that, the 19 inch is a compromise to allow it to sit on the road better, have better road handling characteristics, and that's fine for most people, I guess. You know, if you tour in Europe and the biggest thing you get up to is doing the twisties in the Swiss Alps or something, and I'm not trying to be critical or a smart ass, but in my case, I bought this bike for primarily Outback Touring. And the 21-inch front wheel will just allow the bike to roll over different terrain easier. That's why a lot of the other major players, KTM, Ducati, some of their bigger dual sport bikes come with a 21-inch front wheel just to make it more suitable for off-road. So that's why I'm switching over to 21-inch. By coincidence, BMW are actually releasing a bike later in the year called the BMW R12GS, and that comes with a 21-inch front wheel. They're turning the clock back to some degree. This bike doesn't have as much tech as the recent models. It's more, I was going to say enduro based, but it comes with a 21-inch front wheel to make it more suitable for off-road. And I was actually going to go to the extremes of investing $30,000 and buying one of those. That would have created its own set of problems. The bike's not set up for outback travel, outback touring, which is what I lean to. So it wasn't going to be ideal, but it may have gone some way to meeting my needs. Anyway, I mentioned that to Dave about the R12 having a 21-inch front wheel, and by coincidence he had just converted his own bike. He's got the same bike as me, a 2016 or 17 R1200 GSA, and he primarily bought his bike as well for the same reason as I did, and that was to stay off the blacktop and do lots of outback travel. So he had already converted his, and he's agreed to help me convert mine. It's not completely straightforward. It's not difficult, but it's not completely straightforward, and he's learned a couple of things as he goes. So I'm going to tap into his knowledge, and yeah, he's going to assist in converting this bike over today. So we'll make our way to Dave's place. Probably take a couple of hours to convert, and it's not new, it's been done before. People with this bike or similar have converted them over for much the same reasons, I guess. So as I said, we'll make our way to Dave's place and see if we can get this bowled over within a couple of hours.
Okay, here we are at Dave's place. Now these are all the bits and pieces that we need for the conversion. I'll start with the wheel itself. This wheel is off a BMW F850. The reason this has been chosen, it's the same hub size as the 19-inch standard on the BMW. So it's just a standard rim off an F850 GS. In this case, I'm just fitting an old run-out tyre to the rim. It's one I've had in the shed for a little while, but it'll do well enough for this conversion. When I decide to go on a long ride, I'll then swap it out for a new tyre. We're replacing both rotors for the conversion. These rotors are actually off a different model BMW. These are 320mm diameter. The standard ones on the 19-inch are only 305. Now, the reason why we're fitting a larger diameter rotor is that there's not a lot of space between the calipers and the spoke on this particular rim. So what we're doing is we're fitting larger rotors, and then what we're going to do is push the calipers back by using spacers, which Dave has had turned. So by pushing the calipers back using longer bolts in those spacers, it means that we don't have to do any machining to the calipers, because otherwise you've got to machine the calipers just to give a little bit more clearance between the spoke and the caliper itself. So 2 new 320mm rotors. Clearly we've got to fit a tyre pressure monitor valve to the rim. Some of the other smaller bits of hardware are just the securing bolts for both the rotors and also the ABS ring. Now, you don't have to replace the ABS ring, but we are. Once we've done the conversion, I'll have the 19-inch wheel complete with all the associated hardware fitted to it. So if I want to swap out the 21-inch and put the 19-inch back on, in case I want to go across Australia or something and just slab it, then I do have that option. And some of the other bits of hardware, we've got this spacer. It allows us to use the existing axle in this new hub. So this spacer, the spacer inside the F80, the F850 hub is a little bit different. So you just need to replace the spacer to accommodate the standard 19-inch axle. Now, a couple of new bearings, of course, which are needed because we're going to knock those bearings out. A couple of bearing covers as well. So that's all the bits and pieces that you need. Probably all up maybe 3,000 Australian dollars. But when I consider the option, which was purchasing a $30,000 BMW R12GS, this is clearly a more viable option. All right, the first thing we're going to do is just knock out these bearings and that spacer inside here and replace it with the new spacer and obviously the 2 new bearings. A lot better than mine. So you can see the difference between the 2 spacers. This is the one out of the 850, and that's the one from my bike with the 19-inch front. Alright, these are the 2 new bearings going in. I suppose you feel it once it hits home, eh? Ordinarily you might put the new bearings in the freezer just to shrink them, so it's easier to put them into the hub. Instead of doing that, what we're going to do is just heat the area with a heat gun. That'll expand the metal around the bearing just to drive it home.
Hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, nice one.
Right, the next step is just to put on both dust seals on either side of the bearings. Now the next thing to go on are the new brake rotors, and as I said before, these are 305mm wide. The new ones are 320, only because we're going to push the caliper back using those spacers. If you use these existing rotors on the new hub, there's not a lot of clearance between the caliper and the spokes, and you've actually got to machine part of the caliper off. So to avoid that, yeah, wider diameter rotors, we'll fix that.
So the only thing with these, they're symmetrical, but the writing goes on the outside. How many you got there, Chris? So we just tighten in a crisscross manner, and the final torque is 19 Newton meters.
Yeah, but it looks like Chris has put in a bit of effort, that's all. The next thing is the ABS ring. Now, you can reuse this one, but I've bought one to fit to the new rim so that I could just swap out this wheel complete without having to make any changes to it. So, yeah, I've gone to the extra expense of buying a new ring, and of course also the fasteners. XA, yeah, a bit of Loctite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, starting to take shape now.
Yep. That's it.
Yes. All right, the next step is obviously to fit the tyre. As I said before, this is just a run out, but it'll be all right for the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's like everything. 23.
Yeah, go to 36, mate.
We've got to pop the bead first, don't we?
Yeah.
Yep, like that. And you want to do the rotors, and I'll just get behind you for this. Leave your camera. Try not to.
Oh, I can move that easy enough. Yeah, and because we're going to use these spacers, the bolts clearly have to be a little bit longer to pull that whole caliper back.
This bit is free, sometimes I just don't put this. Right, put your space here. I've got control here.
All right.
Right.
Okay, the job's been done. So I'm just going to take it around the block just to see how it responds and how it reacts. I don't expect too much of a change. So we'll just take the precautionary ride around the block. I mean, I'm not going to ride like an idiot. I don't do that normally anyway. At the moment I don't feel any change at all. There's no warning lights coming up because I believe the rear wheel, something to do with the speed sensor or something, the rear wheel struggles because the dynamics of the bike have changed. And I was led to believe that, yeah, sometimes you get some warning lights, which will settle down after a while. But at the moment, I've got no warning lights or anything at the moment. Just waiting for the new front tyre pressure monitor numbers to kick in. I've got no recording either on the rear or on the front. And once again, that's because, you know, the dynamics of the bike have been meddled with. You know, the front tyre is a little bit thinner than standard. You know, it's only a 90 by 90 profile front tyre. So far, it feels pretty good. As I said before, the 19-inch just improved its road handling. But at the moment, at slow speed, I certainly don't feel any change. So yeah, I'll go back, pack up my stuff, and then make my way home. When I get home, I'll recheck all the nuts and bolts. And tomorrow, give it a decent test run as I go out with the Thursday club ride with the BMW Motorcycle Club at WA. They normally get together on a Thursday and do 300 or 400 kilometres. Alright, I'm just on my way home now, and I've got to be honest, I can't feel a lot of difference in the bike. I mean, it's a bit taller when you pull up at a set of lights, and that's to be expected, but in the main I can't feel any difference at all. Dave did say that the traction control light may come on from time to time, but that will settle down after a couple of days. Something to do with the back wheel not recognising the new front wheel, and the back wheel thinks it's spinning or something, but that aside, and I can live with that. But that aside, everything else seems to be normal. The tyre pressure monitor is already picking up the change in the front wheel, because they can sometimes take a couple of days to settle down. So in the main, yeah, I can't feel any difference. The big test, of course, will be once I get off road. The only disadvantage with this conversion is that there's not a lot of clearance on the front guard. I mean, even with the 19-inch, there's not much clearance with the front guard. And there is a risk that if you're driving in shitty conditions, mud and the like, that the front guard can get choked up and actually lock up the front wheel. Having said that, but I've done 150,000 adventure kilometres on this bike, and that's only ever happened to me once when I was with Broken Leg Tom and we did the old telegraph track between Norseman and Balladonia, and it was particularly wet and boggy. But that's the only time it's happened. So I'm prepared to accept that risk. You can try and heat the guard and change its shape, and Dave is actually looking at a long-term fix using a guard off another bike. But I can live with that. If it happens once every 150,000 kilometres, you shouldn't complain. So yeah, I'll get the bike home, I'll recheck all the fittings. Tomorrow I'll go for a road ride with the BMW Club. They normally go out on a Thursday to do 300 or 400 kilometres, so I'll take it for a good road test tomorrow, and then go bush in a couple of weeks' time just to see how it behaves. But yeah, at the moment I can't fault it.